Flux before?
Yes. Helps me read. Hello, and welcome back to the Box Office, your one-stop for box office news and analysis. I'm Chris Mims.
And I'm Amanda Tang. And I'm Marissa Tong. And guess what we're not talking about today?
Box office numbers.
Guess what didn't open up?
Movie theaters.
We're doing another news roundup because the box office is still basically in a coma.
But this episode is still going to bang because no clickbait, no BS. This past month might have seriously been the most important 30 days in theatrical distribution history in the last 70 years. That's right, we've officially entered the point in which the stresses of the coronavirus pandemic have altered the film industry forever.
In the last episode, in which I looked more like a taller, wider Latino man, we left off questioning the new prospective dates for blockbuster releases and the straining relationship between studios and struggling theater chains.
On July 6th, a lawsuit was filed against the state of New Jersey by AMC, Cinemark, Regal, and 3 other theater chains. The suit was in response to New Jersey's The Road Back plan, moving forward with reopenings of places such as shopping malls, museums, and places of worship, but still forcing theaters to remain closed. They directly state that the government-mandated total closure of movie theaters is neither fair nor reasonable, and instead is a violation of plaintiffs' First Amendment right of freedom of speech and freedom of expression. Basically, these theaters are saying, hey, if churches can be open, we want to be too.
Everyone knows how religious of an experience going to the movies is. I was baptized in movie theater popcorn. But as for the fate of the lawsuit, we may never know. States across the country are being sued by businesses for having to be closed, so at this point, it doesn't matter how big you are, you've got to get in line. In the meantime, AMC has been taking some other steps to ensure its survival and future.
And let me tell you, this is about to be the most boring part of the show. And that's why she's gonna tell you about it. Take it away, Marissa.
Thanks. AMC enacted a $500 million bond sale back in April, and as of July, it finally took effect. They announced a sweeping restructuring that will bring in $300 million in fresh coin, reduce debt by as much as $630 million, and lower cash interest expense by up to $200 million. In layman's terms, high-level bond owners had their status and bonds diluted in order to sell those sexier bonds at a higher price to lower-level bond holders. Basically, a lot of money went in a complicated financial circle, and somehow AMC ended up with more money than it had before because economy.
Hey, it's like Catwoman said,
The rich don't even go broke the same as the rest of us, huh?
it's predicted that this deal will give AMC enough cash to sustain itself all the way to spring 2021, regardless if they open or not. So I'm sure you all,
Reading's hard.
So I'm sure if you follow movies at all, you've seen that Tenet and Mulan have both had their release dates pushed back. And you best believe if those films had their releases pushed back, that other films followed. Unhinged now has been delayed indefinitely, making Antebellum the first scheduled new theatrical release on August 21st. Bill and Ted Face the Music has now been pushed to September 1st and will be a limited release alongside VOD. More seasonal films like A Quiet Place Part 2, The Conjuring 3, Halloween Kills, and Top Gun Maverick have all been pushed deep into 2021.
However, it's those first 2 films, Tenet and Mulan, that have release strategies that may change the political landscape of theatrical distribution forever. And just when you thought it was all about spicy stuff about bonds.
Look, now, while those were some sexy bonds, the real meat of this episode are the landmark decisions being made by theaters desperately trying to reopen and studios trying to take advantage of changing digital times, which theaters normally don't want. Let's start with Tenet. Nolan's Tenet has been moved for a 4th time, and it will now open August 26th internationally in countries such as France, Italy, South Korea, the UK, and 20 others. But that's right, not the US. We won't be getting it for over a week later on September 3rd. This is a highly unprecedented event, as most American-produced films debut in America, the largest market for movies in the world. But with COVID-19 still being a very serious problem here in the States, that's no longer the case.
While closures are still nationwide here, other countries around the world are starting to open back up as they decrease their COVID-19 statistics. And where they're open, movies are playing. A huge testament to this is the Korean film Peninsula, a sequel to the 2016 film Train to Busan, directed by Yeon Sang-ho and distributed by Next Entertainment World. The film was selected to debut at this year's Cannes Film Festival, but after the film's cancellation...
I actually believe it's Cannes.
What'd I say?
He said can, which is fine.
Oh.
Well, you've never been, so, I don't think that makes you.
The film was selected to debut at this year's Cannes Film Festival, but after the festival's cancellation went to theaters. On just its opening day, it made $2.4 million, showing on 2,338 screens.
That's a lot of open theaters, and that's the biggest number I've seen in months.
As of this past weekend, it's made over $20 million worldwide.
And that's just a new film. China opened up low-risk areas theaters to play older films, with Doolittle bringing in $5.2 million and Bloodshot bringing in $2.8 million. Meanwhile, here in America, the top earnings are coming from Dave Franco's directorial debut, The Rental, distributed by IFC Films, and that made $317,823.
You got
last
it.
weekend.
You got it.
With all this in mind, studios with film backlogs compounded with the fact that larger theater chains have international locations proving that they can make money, the question becomes, how long can the theatrical distribution market wait on the United States? Which begs the further question, how long can any industry wait on the United States?
Of course, it's not all gravy when doing things this way. Piracy is going to be a huge concern for Warner Brothers when releasing Tenet, and they're undoubtedly going to cut into their sales from the movie leaking in the United States, especially if the current prospective opening dates are pushed again.
Yeah, I already know. I know a couple people who are going to leak that.
You.
Not me. I respect the Nolan.
Now on Mulan. Shortly after pulling the film from the release calendar indefinitely in mid-July, Disney has decided to bow out of this madhouse completely and retreated back to the warm embrace of its superfans, who are shelling out $7 a month for Disney Plus, me included. Disney will sell Mulan to Disney Plus subscribers for $30 and have a limited theater run rather than focus on massive domestic or global releases. This marks one of the two biggest blockbusters that theaters were relying on to bring people back in, basically sitting back, looking at the clown and saying, "That's too much, man!" As you can imagine, with Tenet and Mulan postponing, AMC, Regal, Cinemark, and other chains have all pushed their opening dates as well.
I want to see Tenet. Wear your mask, people. Stay indoors. I mean, Jesus Christ, the beach isn't going anywhere for at least 5 years.
It's so depressing, and I mean, George's episode was a lot funnier, so I'm sorry.
I mean, look, we do have some good news, but like right after this kind of scary story. Yeah. So last episode, we reported that AMC would no longer be screening Universal movies after Universal seemingly made a unilateral decision to abandon the traditional exhibition model by putting new releases directly on VOD after the success of Trolls World Tour. However, last week, AMC and Universal struck a deal to get Universal films back into AMC, and holy shiitake mushrooms, they took a dump on everyone. AMC Theaters' historic agreement with Universal Pictures will allow the studio's movies to be made available on premium on demand after just 17 days of play in cinemas, including 3 weekends. The deal, which initially covers AMC's US locations, shatters the traditional theatrical window of nearly 3 months before studios can make movies available in the home. The partners didn't detail financial terms, but AMC, the world's largest theater chain, is expected to share in the revenue from PVOD.
Normally, films have to play for at least 90 days in theaters before they can be made available on DVD and digital. This new deal doesn't even acknowledge a third of that time. More importantly, it doesn't acknowledge other theaters at all. This deal establishes a direct correlation between AMC and Universal films that other theaters do not share. Meaning if Universal pulled its film out of theaters in the minimum 17 days, the only theater that can continue to profit off that film is AMC, which is insane to think about.
Crazy.
However, the box office numbers are historically top-heavy, and according to analysts, the top 2019 films in key categories shows that roughly 80 to 90% of total box office was generated within the first 4 weeks, with the first 3 weeks accounting for 70 to 80%, meaning a lion's share of overall earnings would theoretically still be shared with theaters.
Even still, rival theater chains are pissed. Mookie Greidinger, CEO of Cineworld, the owners of Regals and the second largest theater chain, said, "We do not see any business sense in this model. People need to be aware that the first big movie from Universal is not releasing for 6 months, so there is no pressure here. However, we clearly see this as a wrong move at the wrong time." Furthermore, he solidified that at Cineworld, Regal We are not changing our policy with regards to showing only movies that respect the theatrical window. While Cinemark hasn't said anything yet, we can assume that they're of the same sentiment.
After this, everyone and their dad who owns half the stock started speculating what kind of precedent this would set for our industry and if this was the beginning of studio theater exclusivity wars and deals. But before analysis could even be fully registered, a massive bombshell dropped August 7th, this past Friday. And that was the dismantling of the US v. Paramount verdict from 1948, which we covered last episode. The only law that prevented movie studios from being able to buy movie theaters and therefore create a market of vertical integration. US District Judge Annalisa Torres of the Southern District of New York made the call.
This is big news, and it's been the dreaded fear of smaller filmmakers in theaters. The whole reason this type of vertical integration was banned in the first place is because of its potential to allow a few companies to choke the market and bar new-coming theaters and films alike. Although we do have to consider the fact that the landscape is much different than it was in the 1940s. There are many more ways to consume movies now than just theaters, and filmmaking has largely been democratized, with film equipment being cheaper and more accessible than ever. In fact, some analysts say that this time around, studios are not sweeping in to buy the distressed assets, that major movie studios have no plans.
I thought you were gonna have something over this anyway.
Oh yeah, you're right. Studios are not sweeping in to buy the distressed assets, that major movie studios have no plans to get into the exhibition. With their focus on streaming, including big streaming-focused restructurings this week alone at NBC Universal and Warner Brothers, they prefer to spend billions of dollars building up their own services than worrying about the local staffing, leases, property taxes, and city ordinances that come with running a theater.
So it's analysis time. This month of July into August is a game-changing time for the film industry. I think we all saw the monstrous approaching wave that was PVOD and streaming services, but COVID-19 has accelerated from that of a rising tide to tsunami. While yes, there is truth behind studios not wanting to buy right now due to their endeavors to create streaming platforms, and the fact that buying a theater chain at this particular moment of time with the pandemic is not smart, but that doesn't mean they don't want to later or aren't secretly waiting until a chain goes belly up. There's also the possibility of studios who already have the streaming game on lock. Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, etc. could begin to eye purchases. Netflix has already purchased the Egyptian Theater in Hollywood and the Paris Theater in New York.
The industry is stuck between a rock and a hard place. We can either let studios buy dying chains, allowing them to be revived, potentially stifling diversification of films and theater chains, or no one will buy the theaters if they do die and we'll just have fewer of them. A solution to this might be more studio theater exclusivity type deals as established by AMC and Universal, but there's no guarantee every chain will be able to secure that kind of access, and it's a much heavier barrier to entry if you wanted to start a mom and pop theater and make any money after day 17 of a film's release. The floodgates are open, and it's no longer an if studios could buy movie theaters, it's when studios will buy movie theaters. And the biggest heavyweight of them all, AMC, who may have had the power to do something about this, has basically proven that it can be bought by the sweet, sweet aroma of streaming profits.
This has all been heavy stuff, and I'm gonna need a fluff piece stat.
Oh, right. I did promise something uplifting. Okay, it's true that we might not see movie theaters open for the foreseeable future in the US, but that doesn't mean you can't go out and watch a movie. Drive-in theaters saw a huge resurgence throughout the month of July and have been consistently bringing in hundreds of thousands of dollars from hungry movie lovers.
That's true, and in fact, a lot of events and attendance has been championed by the industry. Michael B. Jordan's production company, Outlier Society, teamed up with Amazon for a series of drive-in theater screenings called A Night at the Drive-In, in which local communities could attend at no cost and receive refreshments provided by Black and Brown-owned businesses. Jordan attended several of these screenings himself, actually.
And if you're craving a safe outing but still not sold, Peter Ramsey, director of the Academy Award-winning Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and friend of mine, wrote a touchingly whimsical article in defense of the drive-in theater experience, saying, "Trips to the theaters were practically like going to religious services. Everything told you that you were doing something special and important. The emotions I felt were heightened, Every second on the screen, every sound from the speakers had meaning. These moments were happening now. I didn't know when my next trip to the theater would be, so I had to pay attention. I think we're all in this position with the pandemic, so please enjoy your movie outings as you can.
I know that was a lot of information, so please let us know what you think down in the comments below. Will studios buy theaters? Is that really a bad thing anymore? Will the film industry move forward even if the US doesn't get shit together? We're dying to know what you think, so let us know.
That's going to be it for us. Keep hope alive, people. Let's get through this so we can all go see Tenet right away. And in the meantime, put on your mask and go see a movie at the drive-in. See you next time, everybody.